Hello, class. Welcome to week 3. This week we're talking about turning our 2D sketches into actual 3D parts. For this video, we're going to be going over part 2, which will be drawing one view of the shape and extruding that into 3D to accomplish all of the dimensions given on the page. We'll be going over part 3 to talk about drawing multiple features across multiple sketches um, within a part. And then we'll be going over part 4 to be talking about midplane extrusions. So, starting with part 2, a brief breakdown of the page. In the top right corner, you have the isometric view. So this is a 3D view of the model from an isometric angle. If you imagine this is the front, we're holding it at a way that captures the top right corner over here, so that we're looking straight into that. And what that lets us do is it lets us see the front, the top, and the right view in a 3D fashion, versus down here in a 2D fashion, we have the outline of the front, we have the outline of the top, and we have the outline of the side, as if we were looking at it either flat on, or straight down from the top, or straight on from just the right side of the object. Your views will always be aligned, so you can take a pencil and anything on the bottom should connect to something aligned on the top. So from pretending like I'm looking at it from the top to looking at it on the front, I can tell that these two lines are the start and end point of this curve. These two lines are the start and end point of this fillet. It goes all the way across over to the start and end point of this fillet. We have the two circles. Looking at it from the right, we have the top of the arc. We have the top of the inner arc as the dashed line. We have the top of the leg as the solid line, the holes as well, and then the bottom. So your 2D views are there for you to easily dimension your features, whereas your 3D view is there so that you can, as a human, get a visual idea of what the object actually looks like. All right, so let's start a new part. Okay, so like I mentioned in class, when I'm looking at my different views and trying to figure out what my starting point is, I usually want to pick the view that captures the most detail about the shape of the object. So about the most specifically about unique shapes within the object. So looking at this, which is mostly rectangular on the top, mostly rectangular on the side, versus like a full outline of the shape from the front, I would pick the front view since it captures the bends of the legs, it captures the arc of the circle. That will be my starting point. Whereas if I was to draw the holes, I would not pick the front view to the front plane to draw the holes on, because I can't see the diameter of the circle. I can't see, the only thing I can really see is how far down it goes from these other two views. So for the circles, I would pick this top view because it gives me both the placement of the circles on the top, from the top, as well as the diameter of the circle. So the feature that you choose to draw determines, and the plane that best describes that feature determines where you're going to be drawing that feature as a sketch versus capturing as an extrusion. It's important to go as a game plan, with a game plan for every part. So the only two features that I see that would need to be done in separate steps are one being this outline, or the overall shape that captures the majority of these dimensions. The holes, like I just mentioned, have to be done separately, so that'll be my second step. There will be a third step, which will be these fillets, because As a recommendation, unless the fillet is important to define some other part of the drawing, fillets should always be done last, and they should always be done in 3D, is my recommendation. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fillets, and then 7, 8 on the other side of this right view. If this right view only had 2 fillets, we would be able to see the flat corners peeking out from the other side when looking on the right. And because they don't peek out, that's how you can tell that, plus the drawing, that there should be 4 fillets, 1 on each bottom corner. Okay, step 1, draw this outline. I'm going to put the center point right in the middle of the circle. And by making it again part of the sketch at the start, I don't have to worry about fully defining it or adding a constraint to it later. So drawing this center arc, I'm going to do a center point arc, click on the center point of the circle, click on the starting point of my arc, the ending point of my arc, and I'm good. Let's see. This looks like a good candidate for an offset because everything is spaced by 0.5 inches. We need to make sure we're in inches. So as designated at the bottom of the page, if I look at my SolidWorks screen, it looks like right now I'm in millimeters. And so if I'm going to click on that box, switch to inches, it takes me out of my sketch, so I can right click on my sketch in my feature manager, hit the edit sketch icon, which is just the sketch icon with a pencil, brings me back into my sketch. And now I'm in inches. Okay. So again, this is a good candidate for offset, which we talked about last week. So I'm going to draw these outside lines. Doing the outside because it's well defined to be 8.75 from the left to the right of the outside, 1.25 from top to bottom, and the outside arc is, well, the inside arc is defined here, so we'll figure that out when we get to it. So we are going to draw the outside arc, so left and down. Open up my line tool again, right and down. We'll start dimensioning. Left to right is 8.75 inches. Top to bottom is 1.25 inches. And then we need to look at how these move. So I click and I drag. I want these to be equidistant from the center, but I can move both of them to be both move left or both move right. So let's make them equidistant from the center with a symmetry line. So I plop down a center line, a dashed line. I click on my 2 lines that I want to make equidistant and the center, and I make them symmetric. This point moves and it can stretch and shrink. I want it to be not to that. I want it to be equally horizontal with this point over here, or I can make the line segments equal. Either will work. This last time I did equals, so this time I will do horizontal to set those 2 points flat on the same flat line. Okay, so now I need to go, I can't really define this too well. Let's see, I mean, I guess I can. So it's 2.76 for the inner circle. So it would be 2.76 plus 5, 0.5 would be the outer circle. So that's this dimension plus the spacing. But because it's a radius, I need to make sure that I divide that whole quantity by 2. Did I do that backwards? 2.76 diameter. I need to divide it by 2. So we'll divide it by 2, and we'll divide it by 2 again. Let's see. No, my math was just wrong entirely. We need to do 2.76, turn that into a radius. So we divide that by 2, and then we add 0.5 to that. So because this is extending the radius out. So that gives us an answer of 1.88. Okay, and now we're ready to offset because everything is fully defined. I hit offset entities. I select everything that I want to offset. Selecting one line of the sketch just went all the way to the end, so I didn't need to individually select everything. But that's okay. We need to draw the inside, and so I'm going to reverse the direction with the second checkbox. I'm going to switch it to 0.5. Gonna hit OK. The shape's weird though, and the reason for that is because I do not want so the half circle is for the inside circle, not for the outside circle. So we can fix that. It looks like this line lines up this coincident relation highlighted this line, and this origin in pink. So this is what's keeping the half point of the circle to the center line. So I'm going to delete that with the delete key. That did not free it up. This one as well, let's delete. So I click it. I can also right click, hit delete. Okay. So now we're closer to what we want. So I'm just going to try and move the inside circle till it'll be better aligned with what I want. There's another one, this one, it looks like is doing the same thing for the left side. Okay. And now I can select these two lines. Let's see. I want these two lines to be collinear to each other. And then I want this line and the origin to be coincident. All right, and that's fixed our circles. Again, the main part of the sketch is actually the extrusions, so if you need help with the sketching itself, those are best done in some earlier videos in this playlist. Connecting those lines, I'm not doing the corners because those are fillets, and fillets should be done in 3D at the end. This is pretty well defined. I can add a driven sketch just to show that the 50 is there, 0.5. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we need to do this 3-inch width. And so I'm not going to make a second sketch to define that dimension. I'm going to define it with an extrusion by taking this and expanding it backwards. So for this one, I'm going to hit exit sketch, but you can also just hit extruded boss base directly to get into the extrusion tool. Extrusion is what's creating the material, the 3D model. So it takes a 3D sketch and it just shoots outwards in a defined direction, as this tooltip shows, in 1 or 2 directions to make a solid part. So I'm going to hit extruded boss base. It pulls up this message on the left. I'm going to be using the second option, use an existing sketch to extrude. I'm going to click on part of that sketch. So that's this line. And I can see my shape start to be previewed for turning it into a solid shape. This box here with the smart dimension icon, or the dimension icon, is where you put your distance. And so I want it to be 3 inches. I'm going to click in the space to update the dimension. I said I was going to have it shooting backwards, so arbitrarily I'm going to hit the flip direction button, which is next to the right under the direction drop down. So you can see that flips it from shooting forwards towards me to shooting backwards towards the back. Realistically, if I was doing this drawing myself, so blind shoots it in a direction blindly, so one direction or the other. There's also the midplane option that shoots it in both directions equally. And so since this part has symmetry across the plane, so like it's across this plane, it's the same distance from beginning to end across the whole shape. For this part, if I was doing it myself, I would be picking midplane extrusion because I like to keep things centered around my front plane, my side plane, and my top plane. But for this example, I'll be hitting blind. Shooting backwards 3 inches. And so some of these dimensions here will be done by defining in your sketches, and some of them will be defined by turning those sketches into 3D objects. So I don't need to ever define this 3 inches because it's done with this extrusion. If I have multiple things to extrude, I can highlight this selected contours box, and I can click individual closed regions to extrude. So this one extrudes the left, whereas that one extrudes the right. But I don't really need it for this one because my preview shows me everything's pretty much good to go. So I hit my check mark. The next thing I need to draw are these holes. And again, drawing the holes on the same plane would not be very conducive because I don't know the placement of the holes. Whereas looking at it from the top, that's a lot. I get a lot more information about where the circle is and the size of the circle. Any sketch just needs a flat surface to draw on. So it could be your front plane, it could be your top plane, it could be your right plane, or it could be a face on your object, as long as it's flat. So I can't draw a sketch over here. See, it's just not doing anything. But if I pick a flat surface and I hit sketch, now I can start drawing. So I'm going to plop down 2 circles. Okay, I'm going to need a center line for this. So I'm just going to draw a flat line. Then I'm going to hover over this left side. Maybe if I click on the left side and click on the line. Nope. Oh, there it is. If I hover over the line, I can click on the midpoint. And then control click on the line itself. Make sure I don't have the edge selected, so I'm deleting that out. And I can make the point coincident with the line. So I can make the line hit that point, which is what I want to do. And since it's a flat line, it'll hit the halfway point for this right side as well. So now this line is well constrained. Enough for what I want for this object. Because all I want is for these center points to also be on that line. So I'm going to click on the point and the line, hit coincident, and the point moves towards the line. I want these circles to be the same size, so I'm control clicking on both of them and hitting equal to make them the same size. And right now they can move left or right. So I want them both to be equally spaced from the center of the drawing. So similarly to how I drew the horizontal line, I draw out my vertical line, splitting the center. Since I have the origin already, I can skip the step where I have to pick the exact center of the line because I've strategically placed the center of my drawing on the origin already. But I'm selecting the 2 points. I want to be equidistant from the center line. Select the center line itself, make it symmetric, and now they move in and out together. So all that's left is the 6-inch dimension, 6-inch point to point, center to center. I said all that's left. There's one thing left. The circles can grow and shrink. So I need to define their size, and they are a 0.75-inch diameter. So now this brings us to the second type of 3D modeling technique that we're going to be using, and that is an extruded cut. Alright, so like how an extrusion, extruded boss base, creates material, an extruded cut uses a sketch to remove material in one or two directions. So if I click extruded cut like I just did, it takes the sketch that I just made and shows a preview for it cutting through the object. Anything that intersects with the yellow will be removed, any part of the model. And then I can use selected contours again if I just wanted to pick like a single circle. So you can see the preview will only cut out the left hole. I can select both again to show that it's cutting out the right. And then we have our direction and distance. So blind, you can pick the direction manually. You can set the distance manually. Midplane, like with the extrusion, cuts it in both directions blindly. In this case though, and then through all goes to the bottommost point of the object or the topmost point of the object and aligns whatever it cuts with that. What we want, the cleanest way to do this one would be either up to next or up to surface. Up to next is a little bit simpler. It literally just says from the sketch, go in the direction you define until you reach open air again and cut out anything solid until from the sketch to the air. So it's cutting out that circle and that circle. The reason that's a little bit cleaner than blind is that if there was something down here that you didn't want to cut through, it'll stop at the air. So my previews look pretty good, so I hit OK, and now those holes are cut. The very, very last bit are the fillets that I talked about, and so instead of doing the 2D sketch fillets, which were here, we're not doing sketch fillets because we're in 3D. We want to make sure we're doing just regular fillets because we're in 3D. So I hit the fillet tool. We want a 0.38 radius fillet, so I'm typing in 0.38 into the box for radius with this symbol. And then I'm going to click everywhere in the drawing where I see a rounded edge. So that's this front corner, this middle corner, this the middle on the right side, this corner edge. And then from both the drawing and from this, I can see the bottom feet have corners that need filleting as well. Still 0.38. Okay, that looks pretty good for my preview. So I hit OK, and my part's almost done. The last thing we need to do is specify the material. Material is always posted at the top, where 1060 is the code. So I can either right click, hit edit material, type in 1060, and pick just the regular 1060 alloy. Or I can right click here in my feature manager on material, hit 1060 alloy, changes the material, and that's important because it changes the density of the part. And so now for your submissions, if I go to evaluate and I hit mass properties, this is where I would take my screenshot, including the part, hitting Control 7 to move it to isometric view, getting a nice view of the part zoom wise, lining up my stats for the density, the mass, the volume, and the surface area, and then taking a screenshot of all this information. You can see that the part looks relatively close to my drawing, and that's a good smoke test on making sure I have the right, everything's properly dimensioned. Hopefully these match the numbers in my answer key, and we will move on to the next part. So a new part file for a new part. Next up, we're drawing this part 3, and the big thing here is that none of these views, I feel, capture both the base and the cylinder pillars accurately. Like, there's not one view that captures both of them well. This one describes the cutout and the square shape of the base with the depth, with these corner features, whereas the cylindrical parts are better captured by this front view combined with the extrusion distances from these two dimensions, these 3 dimensions, 1.25, 2 inches, 1. So looking just at the shape and the details, I will probably start by drawing on the top plane, since this is the front and the lower left. So I draw on the top. I want to just draw this base. Then on the top of the base, once I extrude it, I want to draw some circles and extrude those upwards. And then I can either make the notch on the top plane, or like the end of this cylinder, or I can make it on the top view itself and cut a rectangle downwards through the object to make this notch. Okay. So game plan, again, looking at the shape, seeing the shapes within it, figuring out what parts of each sketch I wanted to tackle one at a time, and then systematically well defining each separate feature, and then extruding them into 3D. So top view, let's make a sketch on the top plane, and we're just drawing this box. So we'll put the center point, I guess, in one of the corners for this one. So starting in the lower left, I'm going over, up, and at a 45-degree angle, up to the top, 45-degree angle again, over to the left, down, up a bit, but not at a 45-degree, down, over a bit, and then down again. So that was just using the line tool, single clicking, so that I can just continually draw until I reconnected the lines to the start. Technically, this corner edge should be a chamfer done at the end, but we'll cover chamfers in later drawings where you're given actual chamfer dimensions. For this one, since we just have an angle and we have it well defined, we'll just well define it here. So just going around in a circle, starting with the largest dimension, top to bottom, I'm going to put 6 inches. 44 is very high, so that's my clue that I should double check my units. My units at the bottom are in inches. I never turned back on my mouse input overlay. So, okay, so let's swap to inches by clicking on this drop down menu, click on inch pound seconds, right clicking on the sketch in the feature tree, clicking on edit sketch, the top left icon, the sketch icon with the pencil, and then let's start dimensioning. So top to bottom is 6 from here, from point to point, and making sure with this dimension to go straight down and not at an angle. So following the direction of the dimension itself, top to bottom I place, and that's 0.25. We need an angle dimension, so I click on 2 lines and go up and to the right to match how this dimension is placed, and that's a 45-degree angle. From the base of the foot up to here, the right side is 3.25. inches. This left side broke, so I'm going to click on the point and drag it to the left to make it look a little bit better. I'm going to set these two to be equal, size, line segments. We'll do the same, I guess. We'll get there in a bit. So this is a 60-degree angle from here to there. I should really make these symmetric, so I'm going to plop in a horizontal center line. Make sure that the yellow box has the horizontal icon. Hover over one of the lines, click on the center point, control click on my line, hit coincidence so that they cross each other, and then I'm going to click on these two lines that I want to make equidistant from the center line. Hit the center line as well, control click, symmetric. Still going clockwise around. This foot is 1 inch. The distance from here to there is 0.88. And it's fully defined, as shown down here. So now I need to complete this extrusion. So taking the top, rotating 90 degrees, I need this top to bottom dimension, which is described top to bottom over here, 3.62. So I'm going to go to features, go to extruded boss base, and do a blind extrusion of 3.62. Again, since there's symmetry, realistically I would do a mid-plane extrusion personally, but it doesn't really matter for this one. So 3.62, this is the top, so since this is on the top, I'll just have it go downwards. No reason, just preference. And the origin's right there. So that's feature 1 done, the base. Next up is feature 2, the circles. So right now I'm hitting space. I'm going to look at it from the right. Zoom out a bit. So again, this is just the right side of the object, where this is the front, the top, the right. And on the right, there should be 2 circles. So I'm going to click on my flat right surface, hit sketch to open up a new sketch. And then in the center of this, I need to draw 2 circles. I need to see how they move. They move together, but they could be anywhere. I need them to be in the center of my object. So I'm going to start a center line from top center to bottom center, hovering over the line. Let me select the midpoint. I'm going to click that line. I'm going to line it up to the circle with coincident. Do the same from left to right. Hover over, click the midpoint, go to the other midpoint. Make sure it has that flat line, horizontal line relation. Control click on the point, control click on the line, coincident to line them up. Still blue, so click and drag, see how it moves. They can grow and shrink. Really, for this one, I can break this feature up into 2 separate features. So I'll start with drawing just the outer circle, doing this part, and then I'll draw the inner circle and do this part. Keep it a little separate. But I could do it together if I really wanted to. But I'll show that in another part, how to selectively pick parts within sketches. So I need to just define this outer edge, and that is from this dimension 2.75 inches diameter. I hit OK. I go to features. I hit extruded boss base. I see my preview. It's too long, and it should be 1.25 from base to tip. So I put it at 1.25. Looks fairly accurate to my drawing. Hit OK. And then on this flat surface, so even though the edge is circle, the face is flat, I'm going to make one more sketch. in the center point of the circle, which if I get close to the center point, it looks like it highlights automatically. I'm going to draw another circle, and you can see it's drawn on the face that I made the sketch on. And that's this inner circle. It's 1.5 according to this diameter inch. I hit OK. And then I go to features. I click extruded boss base to pull it out. And the length of it is 2 inches. Alright, we're almost done. All that's left is this little cutout. So I can either draw a rectangle over here and cut that out, or I can draw almost the rectangle top to bottom, but with these two arcs on the end where the circle is up here, and cut inwards by 1 inch. I'll do the latter so I can show off one more tool. Oops. I did not want to do that. Double click the title bar of the command manager to move or dock it. I double click that, it redocks. That's good to know. So on this flat circle, I'm going to draw a sketch. I need to make sure it's on the same orientation as the sketches, because I could accidentally draw left to right instead of top to bottom. So use my middle mouse wheel just to make sure that, yes, I want the top of the notch to be on the long side of the object, and the bottom of the notch to be also on the opposite long side. I hit space to reorient the camera, and I draw 2 lines from top to bottom. Hit escape, open up my line tool, start at the top, go to bottom straight down. I need a center line. Oops. From the top center point of the circle to the bottom center point, with the topmost to the bottommost. Let's make these symmetric. Okay, and the distance between them is 0.38. According to this guy. And so if I was to do this right now, all I have are 2 lines. I don't have a closed surface, which is what's needed for extruded base and extruded cut. So if I tried to do it right now, it would try and make what's called a thin feature, which is what I don't want. So back in the sketch, I need to close this with the 2 end arcs. And I could do that by just redrawing over the arc, like over this line, or the safer way to do it is to convert entities. So clicking on that, I can convert the entire face into, and what this does is it'll draw the outline of the face. Let's reorient the camera. I hit OK. And so it's redrawn the outline, including the middle parts, which I wanted to keep. And so I'll trim the end parts away, leaving that close shaded region, which lets me know, but even if it's not shaded, which it might sometimes not be, I can tell by going to extruded cut, going to select the contours, and anything that is closed will highlight in red. This notch itself is 1 inch deep, so instead of up to next, I just want a blind cut. That's 1 inch deep, and that looks pretty good. I hit OK. I hit Control 7. I right click on material. I assign my material 1060. I go to evaluate. I open up mass properties, put it side by side. I take my screenshot and I submit that on canvas. And that's part 2, or part 3, the second part of the video. One more. All right. Now this one looks like a doozy, but the main trick of this is what's called a midplane extrusion. where instead of, which I mentioned earlier, instead of blind, you pick midplane because this object has symmetry. If we look at it from the top view, it's equidistant from top to bottom all the way across. So what that breaks down into is if we draw the right view, which the midplane being here and the most detail being here leads me to believe that we want to draw the front plane. If I draw this front plane, I can then separately extrude the circles, the large part of the base, the small part of the base, the triangle, and the back plate. And then that will be a lot easier than, say, than some other approaches for creating this part. So making my part. Again, most detail about the shape is contained for me in the front plane for most of the features. These holes aren't well defined in the front view, so I will not be dealing with those, neither with these fillets, but again, fillets always come in at the end. This cutout as well is not well defined from the front view, so that'll be done in a later step. So let's make a sketch on the front plane. I guess I'll put the origin here on the bottom left arbitrarily. And I'm going to go a little bit faster for this one because this is just sketching. I want to skip the lines that I know are prior to the fillets, so I'm not going to draw a line up here. I'm just going to go straight into the triangle. I don't want to make sure it's not snapping to the midpoint just in case. This point is not at the middle of the line, so I need to still make this horizontal. Okay, let's go now from the bottom, left, downwards, over. Let's draw a couple circles that intersect with that bottom line. I want to draw this going downwards and then connecting to the topmost point of the circle. But I want this to be horizontal. Then I want this to be smaller. Drag everything more into place. There you go. Then we need this cutout, which starts from this corner, goes up, over, and down. Move this more inwards. You'll make this vertical. We'll make, did we lose a line here? What is this? That's there. Okay. It's good enough for me. Let's add some dimensions. Our largest one is from the midpoint to the back plate. This number is too high. That reminds me that I need to be in inches. Okay, so let's switch to inches. Right click on my sketch, go back into the sketch. Okay. Now from left to the center point, 5. From here to there is 2.5. From here to here is 1.75. I'm just going clockwise around the circle. From the bottom to the top of the triangle is also 1.75. The height is over here on the right. It's 4 inches. The triangle left to right is 1.75, making sure I don't go at an angle and instead go straight up to match the drawing. This little line here is 0.25. the distance from here to here is 0.5. I forgot a middle circle. So that circle is 1.5. Let's change that to be, how do I do that? Here. Clicking on the second one turns it into a diameter dimension, which is a little cleaner. Okay. And then now the question is, what else can move? So this can move left and right. This guy can stretch and shrink. So what is the thickness of this base? Here it tells me it's 0.75. What else is blue? This guy, this endpoint can move left to right as well. I'm missing this dimension, this 0.75 for this line. Alright, and now we're fully defined. So now we have the profile, the cross-section of the object. And so now we'll deal with extruding each feature. So most of that information is going to come from our top view. And so we'll just start with this middle section. So this middle section from the 3D view, we can see is like this intermediate 2.5 dimension. So because the 2.5 is pointing to the start and end of the body. So we'll start with that. We'll go to features, we'll go to extruded boss base, and we want to select any closed region, which is any region that'll highlight in red, but specifically want the space region here, and we want that to be done in both directions from the center. So we're going to switch from blind to midplane, and it goes a total of 2.5 inches. So looking at it, let's get the camera in the right spot, kind of here. So yeah, so from beginning of this model to the end of the model is going to be 2.5 inches, and it's going to just extrude the selected region in red that we selected with selected contours. So now that's our base. Let's go back into the sketch by clicking on the drop down for the extrusion we just made, which has just appeared in the feature manager. Clicking on the sketch to see it again, and with the sketch highlighted, we can now click again on extruded boss base, and that lets us pick with selected contours a different part of our object. So now let's do this bottom part, which is this dashed line here. So from the top of the dashed line to the bottom of the dashed line underneath the object, I just tried to rotate over there, is 1 inch. Again, we're doing midplane so that we don't have to, because we know that's equally distant from the sketch direction-wise. So then that's 1 inch. That. And so now we can see our parts having to come together. We can click on either sketch one from either the drop downs from either of our features that we've made so far, and then we'll click extrude boss base again. Let's do this triangle next. The triangle, according to this dimension, is 0.75 from there to there. Midplane extrusion again. Now let's do these circles out here without the cutout, because again, the cutout is best defined from the top view. So it's a little premature to have it right now. So we will do, click on the sketch, click on features, do an extrusion, just the outside circle, and it looks like it's 3 inches from the start of the wheel to the end of the wheel. 3. Midplane, preview looks good. One thing is you always want to make sure merge result is checked, because otherwise they won't merge. One last extrusion is this back plate minus the fillets, because that's not well captured, minus the holes. So from top to bottom of the back plate is over here, left to right as well, 3.75 inches. So we click on our sketch, we click extruded, we click on extruded boss base, we click on the region with selected contours highlighted, and we make it 3.75 inches. Alright, that's pretty close. One thing at this point, one that I want to show is our feature manager, right? Lets you go backwards and forwards in time. So you can go to a part that you need to edit and then slowly reintroduce features after that to see if anything's broken. Also in the feature manager, you can rearrange order parts within reason. So for example, I can make this triangle. Right now this triangle is made after that base plate. So if you can go back to the beginning, we make the base, or we make the bottom part, then we make the triangle. Over here on the tree, I can rearrange instead. So now I was making the base or the body, then the triangle, then the bottom part. So that's something handy that you can play around with. You can't rearrange items above the whatever is it depends on. So you can only rearrange independent features. Okay, let's do this, finish up this back plate. We'll just add some circles. It looks like the placement of the circles depends on the fillets, so maybe we'll add the fillets first, because the center points are between the fillet and the circles are aligned. So that's these two top corners here and there have a radius of 0.63. Now I click on a flat surface. I click on sketch because I need to draw the circles. I draw two circles just willy-nilly. Control click them, make them the same size with an equal relation. I line up the circle with the fillet that I just made with a concentric relation so that they share the same center point. I can do the same on the other side. And then they need to be 0.63 thick or diameter. That makes my two circles. And I can cut them out with an extruded cut. Right now it's blind. In this case, I'm going to go up to the next to stop at the open air. Hit OK. I'm going to reorient my part with the middle mouse wheel. So all that's missing now is this center cutout, which is best defined on the top view. So if I look at it from the top, I want to pick a flat surface, sketch, and then it looks like I cut straight down, just a rectangle outwards. So I'm going to draw a rectangle, like so, line it up with the edge. The rectangle top to bottom is 0.75. The depth from the center point of the circle, which I'll need. So maybe I will select the circle, convert entities, and so it does a projection, right? So a circle from this angle when you turn it flat looks like a line. So it's taken this endpoint, drawn it up here, because it's a 2D sketch, so every part of the model that lines up with the sketch turns into a solid point on this line. And then I will make this line a construction line. And then I will define the distance from here to the center of this line. as 1 inch. All that's left is it needs to be centered. I'll show that in a second. So again, debugging, how does it move? It's not equidistant from the center of the object. So I click on this, I click on my 2 lines, I make them symmetric. It's now well defined. You can see how it has a gap. So let's do, because it's just drawn on this plane of this face, we'll do an extruded cut. We'll do, in this one, we'll do through all, because I want it to cut through the entirety of the object. I hit OK, and that looks pretty good. We assign the material. We open up the mask properties, and we take our screenshot. All right, thank you for tuning in. Catch you next class.